Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Kaufman, a retired family doctor and a CLL patient myself for the last 19 years. I'm the co-founder, executive vice president, and chief medical officer of the nonprofit CLL Society. And I'm going to be talking about some of the most important abstracts presented at the European Hematology Association annual Congress in 2024 that will influence patient care going forward. The paper I'm going to discuss right now was titled Methods of Clinical Trial Site Selection to Improve Clinical Trial Diversity. Let's look at the bottom line on this paper. We know that minority patients are underrepresented in hematological clinical trials, but improving it has been difficult. And the hope is that by using non-traditional trial sites in counties with greater racial diversity, we may see better numbers. This is critical as the FDA is rightly mandating that for their approval, new therapies must be tested in a population that's like the population where they'll eventually be used. This applies to drugs for any and all diseases, including chronic lymphocytic leukemia. This research was led by Dr. Brittaney-Belle Gordon. She led a multi-centered group of researchers to present this at the European Hematology Association's annual Congress in Madrid in 2024. In the way of background, despite FDA's mandates reflecting the importance of clinical trial populations reflecting the real-world community that will use the drug that's being studied, recruiting minorities to trials has proven challenging in CLL and across all blood malignancies. There are many, many reasons for this challenge, but one is that most clinical trials are happening in tertiary academic centers where there may be fewer minority patients. Let's look at the methods and participants. 2 lists of trial sites were created, both of which had frontline experience with acalabrutinib. The traditional list was chosen from the top 25 of 3,030 American clinical trial sites based on their historical performance with clinical trial enrollment and their proven access to CLL patients. The novel list had multi-practice sites that were prioritized when they were found in diverse communities as measured in county census data. Traditional and novel sites were then compared based on demographics, trial experience, and diversity metrics, including social determinants of health. What were the results? I think this is telling. The novel sites had a lifetime experience of 7.33 clinical trials versus 120.80 for the traditional sites. So clearly, those academic centers were doing a lot more CLL research than these multi-centered community type sites. In the novel sites, 18% were over age 80 compared to only 13% in the more traditional sites, but the gender and marital status were similar. Getting to what we really want to know, in the novel sites, 63% were from minority populations compared to only 53% in the traditional sites. Let's look at some subtypes here, some subgroups. 25% were African American in the novel sites versus 18% in the traditional sites. 20% were Hispanic in the novel sites versus 17% in the traditional sites. The number of patients recruited that were Asian and American Indian and Alaskan natives were similar in both sites. Novel site patients were less likely to have attained an education beyond high school. They had significantly lower median household income, $69,000 versus $81,000. and they had a higher percentage living below the poverty line, 17% versus 15%. Employment and home ownership were similar between the two recruitment sites. Novel site populations were twice as socially vulnerable than their traditional counterparts, 0.29 versus 0.15. Novel sites had higher minority population densities than traditional sites. So let's summarize what we found. It just makes sense that using sites that are in communities where there is a more diverse population would increase the likelihood of recruiting those minority patients. And this research confirms that, suggesting a path forward to ensure that future trials are more inclusive and serve a more diverse population. This may mean leaning less heavily on tertiary academic centers in the future for CLL research. I provide access to the EHA abstract, methods of clinical trial selection to improve clinical trial diversity in the write-up that accompanies this video. Thanks for listening. Stay strong. We are all in this together.